Today, let's talk about one of the most modern and easiest ways to handle asynchronous tasks in JavaScript async and await. In the past, when we had to deal with asynchronous operations like fetching data from an API or waiting for a response from a database, we used callbacks or chain.then methods. But as our applications became more complex, those older methods became messy and hard to manage. That's where async and await come in. These are modern features in JavaScript that let you write asynchronous code in a clean and readable way. So, what is async? When you add the async keyword before a function, you're telling JavaScript that this function will contain asynchronous code and will always return a promise. Inside an async function, you can use await. And what is await? You use await when you're calling a function that takes time, like fetching data from an API or querying a MongoDB database. When JavaScript sees await, it pauses the function at that line until the promise is resolved. This gives your code a synchronous-like flow, even though it's still asynchronous behind the scenes. Here's a simple example. So here, the async keyword is used to define a function that contains asynchronous code. When you mark a function as async, it means that the function will automatically return a promise. Inside that function, you can now use the await keyword. We use async so that we can write asynchronous logic like API calls or database queries in a cleaner, more readable way. The await keyword is used inside async functions. When we use await in front of a promise-based function, it pauses the code until that promise is resolved. It's like telling JavaScript, wait here, get the result, then continue with the next line. This helps avoid writing then chains, making the code more readable. And what is fetch? Fetch is a built-in JavaScript function that lets you send HTTP requests to APIs. You can use it to get or send data from and to servers. It returns a promise that resolves to a response object. In our example, we are asking the server for user data, and await tells JavaScript to wait until the response is received. And what is JSON? And why do we use it? When we receive the response from fetch, it's not in usable JavaScript object format. It's usually in JSON format, JavaScript object notation, which is a standard data format. To convert the raw response into a usable JavaScript object, we use response.json. JSON itself also returns a promise, so we use await here as well. Now, data contains the actual user data we fetched in JavaScript object form. Let's say we want to fetch user data from an API. We'll use async await to do it in a clean and readable way. Step 1, create an async function. Step 2, fetch data from a fake API. Step 3, convert response to JSON. Step 4, log the user data. Step 5, call the function. Now, let's understand this code. First, I created an async function called getUserData. When we use async, it allows us to use the await keyword inside that function. Then I used fetch to get some data from a dummy API. Since fetch returns a promise, I added await to pause the code until we get the data. After that, I used await response.json to convert the response into readable JSON format. This is important because raw responses can't be used directly. Finally, I logged the user data to the console. If there's any error, like the API is down the catch block, we'll catch it and log the error. This is a clean and modern way to write asynchronous code. It makes our code look and behave more like synchronous code while still being non-blocking in the background.